Screening, they move to stage 2, financial screening.
Financial. Okay, so now we're looking at the money side.
Exactly. This is where they dig into the company's books. They scrutinize its financial health, specifically looking at its debts, its liquid assets like cash, and any income it gets from non-compliant sources. Then it's generally deemed shariah compliant for investment purposes.
Correct.
What specific financial bits are they zooming in on?
3 main things. First, debt. But critically, only interest-bearing debt.
Why only interest-bearing?
Because interest, or riba, is fundamentally prohibited. Now, there's an understanding that in today's world, purely Islamic financing isn't always available, so companies often end up taking on some interest-bearing debt.
So it's a concession.
Yes, a sort of concession to necessity. A small amount is tolerated, not because interest itself is suddenly okay, but because completely avoiding it can be practically impossible for many businesses.
Interesting. A pragmatic approach. What's the second financial check?
Second is liquidity. This looks at the company's mix of cash and debt. It connects to an Islamic legal rule called sarf, which deals with exchanging monetary values.
Sarf! Okay, what's the principle there? Basically, if you exchange money for money, like currency, it has to be equal amounts and done immediately, on the spot. No delays, no unequal values. It's about fairness. And trading debt itself is often restricted, so they look at the company's cash and debt structure through that lens.
Got it. Equal exchange, spot transactions for money-like things, and the third element.
The third is illegitimate income. This is any income the company gets from interest or other non-shariah compliant activities that slip through.
And what happens with that income?
It has to be purified. That means the investor needs to calculate their share of that illegitimate income and donate it to charity, essentially removing its taint from their investment returns.
Purification. Okay. Does everyone agree on how and when to do that?
No. There are different views on the specifics, like when exactly you calculate it, who's responsible for donating it, but the underlying principle of removing that prohibited income is consistent.
Okay, so we have the 2 stages, sector and financial. And the financial stage looks at debt, liquidity, and illegitimate income using thresholds. But you mentioned earlier that different groups have different thresholds. Why? If they're looking at the same things, why the different numbers?
Right. And that's really the crux of it, the most fascinating part highlighted in the research. While many shariah advisory boards use similar criteria, debt, income, etc., the reason the actual thresholds differ, well, it mainly comes down to their underlying methodology.
Methodology, meaning how they arrive at the rules.
Exactly. How they derive those specific percentage limits. Everyone agrees the non-compliant part should not be much, right? But how much is much? That definition varies based on the interpretive approach they take.